The sea, once it casts its spell, holds one in its net of wonder forever. Jacques Cousteau said that, but he never told you why. Listen, I need to tell you something that might change how you see everything. You know that feeling when you wake up from a dream so vivid, so real, that you question what's actually true. That's exactly what happened to humanity with Atlantis. We've been dreaming while awake. Every ancient text, every flood story your grandmother whispered, every unexplained structure under the ocean, they're breadcrumbs leading back to something we've forgotten, something that lives in your DNA. In those moments when you stare at the ocean and feel homesick, have you ever wondered why every culture on Earth has flood myths? Why children draw spirals before they're taught geometry? Why certain frequencies make your soul remember something it never learned? Here's what they don't want you connecting. Atlantis wasn't just a place, it was a state of consciousness, a time when humans operated from their heart center, not their programmed minds. When we could heal with intention, communicate without words, create without destroying. That technology? It's still inside you, dormant but waiting. Chapter 1: Plato's Account and Global Parallels. Truth is not what you want it to be, it is what it is. But here's what nobody tells you about Plato. He wasn't just a philosopher. He was initiated into Egyptian mystery schools, the same temples where they kept records going back 36,000 years. When Plato wrote about Atlantis, he wasn't creating fiction. He was breaking protocol. Think about it. Would you risk your reputation, your legacy on a bedtime story? This man gave us democracy, justice, the foundations of Western thought. Yet we dismiss his most detailed account as fantasy. But here's where it gets incredible. Every indigenous culture on Earth carries the same memory. The Hopi speak of the Third World that ended in floods. Aboriginal Australians tell of Lemuria. Even your own grandmother probably knows flood stories passed down through generations. What if these aren't separate myths, but scattered pieces of one shared memory? What if humanity experienced collective trauma so profound that we've spent thousands of years in spiritual amnesia? Here's what's fascinating. When trauma therapists work with patients, they discover that the body remembers what the mind forgets. Your nervous system still carries ancient patterns. That unexplained fear of deep water, that pull toward the ocean, those aren't random. They're echoes of a time when the world changed forever, and we're still healing from it. Chapter 2: Echoes in Ancient Civilizations. When the student is ready, the teacher appears. But what if the teacher has been here all along, carved in stone, humming in frequencies, waiting in your own heartbeat? You walk past it every day without seeing it. That sacred geometry in flower petals, the golden ratio in your face, the spiral in your fingerprint. These aren't accidents. They're reminders of who you really are, encoded in everything around you. Have you ever stood inside a cathedral and felt something shift in your chest? That's not architecture. That's acoustic engineering designed to activate your pineal gland. The builders knew exactly what they were doing. They understood that sound, shape, and sacred proportion could awaken dormant parts of your consciousness. Your ancestors weren't primitive. They were plugged into something we've forgotten how to access. They built with intention, not just function. Every pyramid, every stone circle, every temple was a technology for human expansion, not Wi Fi for your phone, but Wi Fi for your soul. Here's what blows my mind: modern science is finally catching up to what ancient civilizations knew intuitively. Researchers have discovered that the Great Pyramid generates electromagnetic fields, that standing stones create measurable energy vortexes, that certain frequencies can literally restructure water, the same water that makes up 70% of your body. But here's the real secret they don't want you to remember: you don't need the pyramid. You don't need the temple. You are the temple. Your spine is the antenna. Your heart is the generator. Your breath is the activation sequence. Every meditation teacher, every yoga instructor, every sound healer is unknowingly passing down fragments of this technology. That feeling when you chant Om, that's your internal pyramid firing up. When you feel energy moving through your chakras, that's your personal Atlantis coming online. The cover up wasn't about hiding cities underwater. It was about convincing you that magic is extinct, that miracles are myths, that you're just a biological machine instead of a conscious creator. But something's shifting. People are waking up to abilities they can't explain: sudden knowing without learning, healing without medicine, manifesting without trying. The same gifts that were once common knowledge are surfacing again. Your DNA remembers everything: every initiation, every awakening, every moment of divine connection your lineage ever experienced is stored in your cells, waiting for you to remember, not through books or teachers, but through direct experience. Chapter 3: The Living Technology Within. We are not going to be able to operate our spaceship Earth successfully, nor for much longer unless we see it as a whole spaceship and our fate as common. Buckminster Fuller said that, but he never told you what he discovered about frequency technology in his geodesic domes. Let me ask you something personal. When you hold your phone, do you feel that slight vibration even when it's not ringing? That's not imagination. Your nervous system is picking up electromagnetic fields your conscious mind can't process. Now imagine if, instead of being bombarded by these chaotic frequencies, you lived in a world designed to harmonize with your natural biorhythm. That world existed, and it's trying to remember itself through you. You see, we've got it backwards. We think technology should be separate from us, something we use, control, discard. But what if real technology was alive? What if it grew with you, responded to your thoughts, evolved with your consciousness? Your heart generates an electromagnetic field 60 times stronger than your brain. Scientists can measure it 8 feet away from your body. But here's what they don't tell you: that field changes based on your emotional state. When you're in coherence, when heart and mind align, you become a walking broadcast station of healing frequency. This isn't New Age fantasy. This is quantum biology. Your DNA vibrates. Your cells communicate through biophotons, actual light particles. Every emotion you feel changes your cellular frequency. You are already the technology you're searching for. But somewhere along the way, we forgot how to tune ourselves. Have you ever walked into a room and immediately felt the vibe? That's frequency reading. You're picking up the energetic signature of everyone who's been there. In ancient times, this wasn't considered supernatural. It was basic human literacy, like reading facial expressions, but with your whole being. The Atlanteans didn't build technology. They grew it. They understood that consciousness and matter aren't separate things, they're different expressions of the same creative force. Your thoughts literally reshape reality at the quantum level. Every prayer, every intention, every moment of focused attention sends ripples through the field of possibility. Want proof this is real? Look at what's happening in your life right now. The synchronicities, the people showing up exactly when you need them, the opportunities appearing just as you're ready. That's not luck, that's frequency matching. You're finally tuning into the station you've always been broadcasting on. But here's where it gets intense. The same technology that can heal can also harm. Every wireless device in your home is frequency technology, just crude, chaotic versions of what once existed in harmony. We're drowning in electromagnetic pollution, surrounded by artificial frequencies that disrupt our natural rhythms, while forgetting we have the power to override them with our own coherent field. The real conspiracy isn't that they're hiding Atlantis from you. It's that they've convinced you that you're powerless, that healing requires pills, that communication requires devices, that energy comes from outside sources. But your ancestors knew better. They knew that a human being in alignment is more powerful than any machine. This is why meditation feels so natural once you start, why certain music moves you to tears, why being in nature instantly shifts your state. You're remembering your original operating system, the one that runs on love, not fear, on harmony, not competition, on trust, not control. Every time you choose to breathe deeply, instead of staying stressed, you're accessing Atlantean technology. When you listen to your intuition over your programming, when you follow your heart despite logical objections, when you trust the flow instead of forcing outcomes, that's the same frequency management that once powered entire civilizations. But here's what nobody talks about. This awakening isn't comfortable. As you start operating from this deeper place, everything that isn't aligned begins to fall away. Relationships that were based on old patterns, jobs that drain your life force, habits that numb your sensitivity. It can feel like everything is breaking down, but it's actually breaking through. You're not losing your mind, you're finding your frequency. The people around you might think you've changed, and you have. You've remembered that you're not just a biological machine struggling to survive. You're a conscious being capable of creating, healing, and transmuting energy through pure intention. That's not crazy. That's your birthright. Here's the secret they never wanted you to discover. Every spiritual practice, every healing modality, every consciousness expanding technique is a fragment of this original technology. Yoga activates your energy centers. Meditation synchronizes your brainwaves. Sound healing restructures your cellular matrix. Prayer connects you to the field of infinite possibility. You're not learning something new. You're remembering something ancient, something that's been encoded in your DNA, waiting for the moment when humanity was ready to handle it responsibly. That moment is now, not because the calendar says so, but because you're here, listening to this, feeling that stirring in your chest that says, "Yes, I remember." That's not nostalgia, that's activation. The question isn't whether you can access this technology. You already are. The question is, what are you going to do with it? Are you going to use it to create more beauty, more healing, more connection? Or are you going to let fear convince you it's too powerful, too dangerous, too impossible? Because right now, In this moment, you have a choice. You can go back to sleep, back to the comfort of believing you're ordinary, or you can step into the truth of what you really are, a living, breathing piece of the technology that once lit up the world. Chapter 4: The Fall of Atlantis. You know what keeps me up at night? It's not the bills, not the deadlines, not even the endless scroll of social media. It's this nagging feeling that we've been here before, that's somewhere in our collective memory. We carry the weight of a choice we once made badly. Have you ever stood in your kitchen, phone in hand, and suddenly felt empty? Like all this technology around us is supposed to make life easier, but instead it's pulling us further away from something essential. That's exactly how I imagine the last days of Atlantis felt. Let me share something with you that most people won't tell you about spiritual collapse. It doesn't happen overnight. It's not some dramatic movie scene with earthquakes and tsunamis. It starts much quieter. It starts with small compromises. Think about your grandparents for a moment. Remember how they used to know things? Not from Google, but from some deeper place. They could sense weather changes in their bones, knew which plants healed what ailments, understood that certain times of day held different energies. That wasn't superstition. That was connection. Now, when did we lose that? When did we start trusting algorithms more than our intuition? The ancient texts speak of Atlantis as this incredible civilization where technology and spirituality dance together. Picture this: buildings that healed people just by walking through them, crystals that powered entire cities without pollution, leaders chosen not for their bank accounts or popularity, but for their wisdom and heart. But here's what happened, and this is where it gets personal. They started believing they were the source of their power instead of channels for it. Sound familiar? I see this every day in our world. We've created miracles. We can video call someone on the other side of the planet, cure diseases that used to kill millions, even send rovers to Mars. But ask yourself this: when was the last time you felt truly connected to another human being? When did you last sit in silence and actually hear your own thoughts? The split that destroyed Atlantis wasn't political or religious in the way we think about it today. It was deeper. Edgar Cayce, that remarkable mystic who could access these ancient memories, described two groups: those who remembered they were part of something greater, and those who decided they were the center of everything. The first group lived with what I call sacred reciprocity. They understood that every gift comes with responsibility, every power with purpose. They knew that healing the earth healed them, that serving others served their highest self. The second group, they discovered they could manipulate life force itself, what we might call consciousness or spiritual energy today, and they used it for personal gain. They turned inward, not in the beautiful way of meditation and self-discovery, but in the toxic way of ego and separation. Now, be honest with me. Which group do you think is winning in our time? I'm not trying to scare you, but I need you to really think about this. We're living through the same choice point. We have incredible power at our fingertips. We can edit genes, create artificial intelligence, reshape matter at the atomic level. We're modern day Atlanteans. But here's what's different. What gives me hope? We have their story as a warning. We can see the pattern. Every time I watch someone choose their phone over their child's story, every time I see us treating symptoms instead of causes, every time we prioritize profit over the planet that sustains us, I see Atlantis making the same mistake again. But I also see something else. I see people waking up. I see individuals choosing meditation over medication, community over competition, wisdom over mere information. I see the remembering beginning. You feel it too, don't you? That pull toward something more authentic, more connected, more real than what we've been sold? The fall of Atlantis wasn't just about a civilization ending. It was about a consciousness choosing separation over unity. And that consciousness lives in each of us today. Every moment we're voting with our attention, our choices, our values. Are we sons and daughters of unity, recognizing our connection to all life? Or are we falling into the same trap of thinking we're separate, special, above the natural laws that sustain us? The Earth isn't going to wait for us to figure this out. The imbalance is already showing. But unlike Atlantis, we have time. We have awareness. We have choice. Chapter 5. The cover-up of spiritual knowledge. Let me ask you something that might sound strange at first. Have you ever walked into an old library, touched an ancient book, and felt a shiver run down your spine? Or maybe you've stood in front of certain artwork and felt like you were looking at something you'd seen before, even though you know you hadn't. That's not coincidence, that's recognition. I want to share something with you that changed how I see everything. Growing up, I always felt like I was missing some crucial piece of the puzzle, not just about life, but about who I was supposed to be. You know that feeling when you're at a party but you feel completely alone? When everyone's speaking the same language but somehow you don't understand the conversation? That feeling isn't depression or social anxiety, though they'll try to medicate it. That feeling is your soul remembering something your mind was taught to forget. Here's what they never tell you in school. Every ancient culture on Earth has the same story. Different names, different details, but the same core truth. A golden age when humans lived in harmony with forces we can barely imagine today. Then something shifted. Knowledge got buried. Wisdom became superstition. Connection became separation. But here's the twist that keeps me awake at night. What if it wasn't an accident? Think about this for a moment. You carry a device in your pocket more powerful than the computers that sent humans to the moon. Yet you probably can't predict tomorrow's weather by looking at the sky. Your ancestors could. You have access to all human knowledge through the internet, yet you likely can't identify the plants growing in your own backyard. Plants that could heal you, nourish you, connect you to the earth beneath your feet. When did we trade instinct for Google? When did we start trusting algorithms over our own inner knowing? I used to think this was just progress, evolution, the natural march of civilization. But then I started noticing patterns that made me uncomfortable. Every time someone talks about energy healing, they're labeled as alternative. Every time someone mentions intuition in a business meeting, eyes roll. Every time a child sees things adults can't see, they're quickly taught to stop imagining. We've created a world where the most natural human abilities, sensing energy, connecting with nature, trusting our inner guidance, are treated like fairy tales. But what if they buried these abilities on purpose? I remember my grandmother telling me stories about her grandmother, who could sense when family members were in trouble, even across great distances. She could look at someone and know exactly what herb they needed. She could read the signs in nature like others read newspapers. My grandmother called it the old knowing. 3 generations later, I'm Googling symptoms and trusting WebMD over my own body's signals. What happened to us? Here's what I've discovered. The knowledge never disappeared. It went underground. It hid in stories, in symbols, in that persistent feeling that there's more to life than what we've been sold. You feel it, don't you? That restless energy when you're going through the motions of a life that looks successful on paper, but feels empty in your heart. That's not a quarter life crisis or a midlife crisis. That's your authentic self trying to break through layers of conditioning. The survivors of lost civilizations didn't just disappear, they became teachers, storytellers, keepers of sacred knowledge. They embedded truth in myths, in fairy tales, in religious texts. They knew that one day, when humanity was ready to remember, the codes would activate. And I think that time is now. Look around. People are waking up to the fact that our modern medical system often treats symptoms instead of causes. They're remembering that food can be medicine, that thoughts create reality, that we're all connected in ways science is just beginning to understand. But here's where it gets personal. And this is what no one else will tell you. The reason you found your way to content like this isn't random. The reason certain ideas resonate with you while others fall flat isn't just personal preference. It's recognition. It's ancient memory stirring in your DNA. You've lived before, not just in past lives, though that's part of it, but in ages when humans remembered their true power, when healing happened through intention and energy, not just pills and surgery. When communication happened through consciousness, not just words. When technology served spirit instead of replacing it. That ache you feel? That sense that you're meant for something greater? That's not ego. That's truth trying to surface through generations of forgetting. The biggest lie they ever told you is that you're powerless, that you need experts, authorities, institutions to tell you what's real, what's possible, what's true for your own life. But what if you didn't? What if the wisdom you're seeking was never actually lost? What if it's been waiting inside you all along, patient as the earth itself, ready to emerge the moment you stop looking outside yourself for answers? The memory lives in your cells, in your dreams, in those moments of knowing that come from nowhere and everywhere at once. Your job isn't to search for truth. Your job is to remember it. And once you do, everything changes. Chapter 6: Atlantis as a Forgotten Consciousness. There's something I need to tell you, and I hope you're sitting down for this. That moment when you're driving alone and suddenly get an idea so clear, so perfect, that you know it didn't come from your thinking mind, that's not random inspiration. That's you tapping into something much older and more powerful than you've been taught to believe. Let me share a story that happened to me last week. I was meditating, nothing fancy, just sitting quietly, when suddenly I felt this overwhelming sense of coming home, not to a place, but to a way of being. Like my consciousness had remembered something it had forgotten for lifetimes. Have you ever had that experience? Where for just a moment, everything makes sense. Where you feel connected to something so vast and loving that your everyday worries just dissolve? That's not spiritual bypassing or wishful thinking. That's memory. Ancient memory of who you really are. You see, We've been sold this story that consciousness is just brain activity, that thoughts are random neural firings, that we're basically biological computers running on autopilot. But what if I told you that's the biggest lie ever told to humanity? What if your consciousness isn't produced by your brain, but channeled through it? What if your mind isn't a prison, but a doorway? I want you to think about the most creative moment you've ever had. Maybe you were painting, writing, problem solving, or just daydreaming. Where did that creativity come from? Was it really just neurons firing? Or did it feel like you were receiving something from beyond yourself? The ancients knew something we've forgotten. They understood that consciousness is the foundation of reality, not the other way around. They knew that when you align your awareness with universal principles, love, harmony, truth, you don't just feel better, you become a co creator with life itself. But here's where it gets interesting, and this is something you won't hear in mainstream spirituality. The reason this knowledge was hidden isn't just about power and control, it's because consciousness itself is evolving. We're not just remembering an old way of being, we're birthing a new one. Think about what's happening right now in your life. You're probably feeling called to live more authentically, right? To question systems that felt normal just a few years ago, to seek deeper connections, real conversations, meaningful work. That's not a personal crisis. That's consciousness evolution happening through you. I've been tracking this for years, and I'm seeing patterns that absolutely blow my mind. People all over the world are having the same realizations at the same time. They're leaving jobs that drain their soul. They're ending relationships based on obligation rather than love. They're choosing presence over productivity. It's like we're all getting the same memo from some cosmic headquarters. Time to remember who you really are. And here's what's beautiful about it. You don't need anyone's permission to step into this awareness. You don't need credentials, initiation, or special training. You just need to trust what you already know deep down. Remember when you were a child and you could feel when someone was sad, even if they were smiling. Remember when you knew things without being taught them. Remember when imagination felt more real than the so-called real world. That wasn't childhood innocence. That was your natural state of consciousness before the world convinced you to shut it down. The ancient civilizations that thrived, and I mean really thrived, not just survived, they built their entire societies around this understanding. They knew that when individuals are connected to their deeper knowing, communities naturally organize around wisdom rather than fear. They understood something we're just rediscovering, that healing happens through resonance, not just medicine, that learning happens through transmission, not just information, that creation happens through alignment, not just effort. But here's the part that gives me chills. You don't have to believe any of this for it to be true. You don't have to study ancient texts or join spiritual groups. You just have to pay attention to what's already happening in your own experience. Notice how certain people feel like home the moment you meet them. Notice how some places make you feel more alive just by being there. Notice how your body responds to different thoughts, different emotions, different intentions. That's your consciousness recognizing itself. That's the Atlantean within you stirring awake. The old world is crumbling. We can all feel it. But something beautiful is being born through the cracks. Not a new system to follow, but a new way of being. one where each person becomes a lighthouse of consciousness, radiating their authentic truth and naturally attracting others who resonate with that frequency. You're not broken and needing to be fixed. You're not lost and needing to be found. You're consciousness itself, temporarily forgetting your infinite nature so you can experience the joy of remembering it again. Chapter 7: Recognizing Your True Heritage. I need to ask you something, and I want you to be completely honest with yourself. When you were a kid, did you ever feel like you were visiting this planet rather than living on it? Like you were watching everyone else follow some invisible rule book that nobody ever gave you? I used to think I was broken. Maybe you did too. See, I'd sit in classrooms learning about history, and something inside me would whisper, that's not how it really happened. I'd watch the news and feel this deep sadness that went beyond what I was seeing, like I was mourning something much bigger than current events. I'd walk into certain buildings and either feel completely at home or want to run away immediately for no logical reason. For years, I thought there was something wrong with me, until I realized there was something right with me that the world wasn't ready to acknowledge. Here's what nobody talks about in spiritual circles, and this is going to sound wild, but stay with me. There are people walking around right now who carry cellular memories of experiences their current brain never had. People who know things they were never taught, who feel homesick for places they've never been. And if you're still listening, there's a good chance you're one of them. Let me tell you about Sarah, a woman I met at a coffee shop last month. She's a kindergarten teacher, completely ordinary by most standards. But she told me something extraordinary. She said that sometimes, when she's teaching the children, words come out of her mouth that she didn't plan to say. Ancient wisdom about how plants communicate, how crystals hold memory, how thoughts become things. The children listen with wide eyes, like they remember too. But later, she can't figure out where that knowledge came from. Does that sound familiar? Have you ever surprised yourself with what you know? Here's what I've discovered through years of paying attention, and this is something you'll never hear in a psychology textbook. The people who feel most out of place in this world are often the ones who remember being in place somewhere else, somewhere that honored sensitivity instead of medicating it, somewhere that valued intuition alongside intellect, somewhere that understood energy as the foundation of everything. You might be one of those souls who chose to come back, not because you have to, but because you wanted to help. Think about your childhood for a moment. Were you the kid who talked to plants and they seemed to respond? Who could sense when adults were lying, even when they were smiling? Who felt physically sick in certain environments but couldn't explain why? Who preferred the company of animals to most humans? They probably told you to stop being so sensitive, to toughen up, to live in the real world. But what if your sensitivity wasn't something to overcome? What if it was your superpower trying to emerge? I've been tracking this phenomenon for years now, and the patterns are undeniable. Souls with ancient memories share certain traits that make them stand out in our modern world. They're natural healers, even if they work in completely unrelated fields. They're truth seekers who can smell deception from miles away. They're drawn to water, stones, certain geometric patterns that trigger something deep in their DNA. Most importantly, they feel responsible for something they can't name. like they came here on a mission they half remember. Here's the part that gave me chills when I first understood it. The reason so many sensitive souls feel exhausted by modern life isn't because they're weak, it's because their nervous systems are calibrated for a different frequency. They're tuning forks set to a vibration that once existed but was forgotten. You know how sometimes you'll be in a group of people and feel completely invisible, even when you're talking? That's not social anxiety. That's your soul recognizing that you're speaking a different language, the language of the heart instead of the ego. But here's what changes everything. When you stop trying to fit into a world that wasn't designed for souls like yours, and start remembering what you came here to restore, something magical happens. You find your tribe, not through dating apps or networking events, but through energy, through resonance, through that instant recognition that happens when ancient souls find each other. I see it happening everywhere now. Healers who never studied healing, but somehow know exactly where to place their hands. Artists creating symbols they've never seen, but that make other people cry with recognition. Teachers sharing wisdom that sounds like it's coming through them rather than from them. The veil is getting thinner, the amnesia is lifting, and souls who have been sleepwalking through lifetimes of forgetting are starting to remember why they came. You don't need anyone to validate this for you. You don't need past life regression or psychic readings to confirm what your soul already knows. The proof is in how certain truths land in your body, how some music makes you homesick for a place that no longer exists, how you can walk into ancient sites and feel like you're returning rather than visiting. The world needs your sensitivity now, your ability to feel what others can't, your refusal to accept surface explanations for deep problems, your instinctive knowing that there's a better way to live, even if you can't quite remember what it looks like. You're not too much. You're exactly enough, and you're not alone.